Okay, so today we're going to talk about tones again, but in contrast to stress. Last week I did a video on tone and accent. In that video you will initially learn about what a tone is. I'm going to provide a shorter definition of tone compared to the previous video. It would help if you watch that video. Tone is a term in phonology to refer to the distinctive pitch level of a syllable. Pay attention, the word pitch is key here. Historically, some languages have developed to be tone-based languages or tonal languages, and then other languages that haven't gone through such a development are called atonal languages. This historical process of development of tonal languages is called tonogenesis. The Mandarin Chinese language is a typical example of a tonal language. It's said to have 4 different tones, and those tones are depicted by using certain accent marks or diacritics, more technically speaking. Again, for more on tone, you can watch the previous video, which is called Tone versus Accent. If you want to understand pitch, you need to understand the concept of frequency first. Why am I talking about pitch? Because pitch is the basis of tone. Also, pitch is relevant to the understanding of stress. Pitch is not as key to the understanding of stress as it is to the understanding of tone, but it's a good thing to learn in order for you to compare the two concepts. In the video that is entitled Frequency and Pitch, you will see a discussion of frequency, which is the number of times a sound wave occurs in a unit of time, or in other words, the number of cycles per second. When you speak, your speech has sound energy. It results in the air in front of your mouth being moved by the energy of your voice. This is very similar to the way if you throw a rock in a pond, you will see that water will move in ripples, little waves. That's what happens when you speak. Speech sounds propagate in the form of waves. You can think of each of those ripples as a wave or a cycle. Increase in the frequency of a sound correlates with the auditory sensation of a higher pitch. This picture is a sine wave, with each wave occurring at regular intervals, hence generating the same pattern over and over again. Frequency is the number of complete cycles of vibrations of the vocal folds. In other words, the faster you move your vocal folds, the higher your pitch will be. Pitch is therefore an attribute of auditory sensation of sounds, in which a sound is perceived on a scale of low to high, low pitch, high pitch. In other words, it is an auditory phonetic feature that corresponds to a certain extent to the acoustic feature of frequency. There is no direct or parallel relationship between frequency and pitch, because there are other factors at play. Pitch contributes to the understanding of word stress, intonation, and tone. This is very important because this is the reason why you ask the question of yourself, what is the difference between stress and tone? Natural speech does not come in sine waves or simple sound waves. Natural speech is generated in a combination of different kinds of wave, that is, complex waves. Now we get to stress. Stress is a term in phonetics to refer to the degree of force used in producing a syllable. A stressed and an unstressed syllable differ in that the former is more prominent than the latter, which means a stressed syllable is more prominent. Here, when we say prominence, we mean increases in loudness or increase in amplitude. Amplitude is what contributes to loudness. Amplitude is the actual physical property of sound, and the perception of amplitude is called loudness. Therefore, as you can see, loudness or amplitude contributes to the production of or the stressed syllable. But it's also increase in length, the length of the vowel or syllable, also often the pitch. As you can see, stress is a combination of loudness, length, and often pitch. In layman terms, stress is usually equated with emphasis or strength. Stress can function at sentence level or at word level. For example, in the sentence, "The big man looks angry." If you emphasize big, you give it a stress. That's an example of stress at sentence level. However, stress at word level is giving prominence to a syllable within the same word compared to the other syllables within the same word. For example, in English, the word increase, which is just 2 syllables, depending on which syllable you give prominence to compared to the other, changes grammatical category or word class. If you put the stress on the second syllable, it becomes a verb. If you put the stress on the first syllable, it becomes a noun. Therefore, the verb is increase, the noun is increase. But the discussion of stress gets more complicated depending on whether you pronounce the word in isolation or in combination with other words in the sentence. The stress pattern might be affected. There's different levels of stress that have been identified: primary, secondary, tertiary, and weak. For example, in the word telegraph, telegraphic, and telegraphy. Something very important to know is that stress pattern in English is not predictable, or it's not easily predictable. And to make it more difficult, it's not even marked in writing. In English words, you don't mark the stress. However, in Spanish, the stress pattern is to a large extent very predictable. And because it is the case that it is predictable, when the stress pattern violates the norm, you mark the vowel with an accent to show that the stress pattern is not what you would expect. For example, the word for heart in Spanish is corazón. According to the rules of phonology in Spanish, the stress should be penultimate, which is on ra, corazón. But because it's not, it is on the last syllable, you mark it. Basically, you mark the exceptions and everything else is regular in Spanish. So my point here is stress functions differently in different languages, and it is marked differently in writing systems, and it may not be marked. Key to the understanding of tone is pitch, but key to the understanding of stress is loudness and length. Pitch often contributes to stress, but not always, and it's not key. And again, when you say loudness and length, it is compared to the other syllables in the same word or in the same sentence. But that's what it is. Stress, ladies and gentlemen, versus tone.